welcome to another episode of Mentor Musings. I'm JC, and always I'm joined by my co-host, Brett. Hey, Brett.
Hey, JC, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Great to be back in the office. I know you and Dennis missed me yesterday, or on the last episode, rather. But anyway, I think Dennis, producer Dennis, might actually have a question for us. So let me kick it over to him. Dennis, what do you got?
I do. It's blowing my mind. We finally got one in. And it's on the topic of valuation. And they were asking, and I'll keep these guys anonymous. I don't want them to kind of like feel like we're calling them out. But they felt like they might be overvalued. Now, what is your take for both of you on valuation of a company? Brett, do you want to start off and give our take on that?
Actually, this is JC's passion project, so I'm going to let him go first, and then I'll react off of what JC has to say.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so valuations are tough, particularly for early stage companies, right? But the question specifically, if I understand it from the viewer, is it possible to be overvalued? And it's a tough one. My immediate answer is yes, it is possible to be overvalued. And not only is it possible, it's to your detriment potentially. And the main reason why that is true is because, especially in an earlier stage sense, if your valuation at this time, before you launch or before you're significantly out in the marketplace, is based on vision, opportunity, expectation, momentum, right? That's great. But that doesn't mean that your next round or your next round is going to be based on the same thing. At some point, it's going to come down to actual traction, unit economics, and that is what's going to dictate your valuation. So if you're in a scenario where an early stage investor is, doing their due diligence and says, you're worth $10 million pre-revenue, right? Oh my gosh, this is amazing. We thought we were worth 5 million or 3 million, and this person wants to give us a $10 million valuation. That may seem great, and in some aspects it is for that round. But when it comes time to raise your next round, all of a sudden, now you have to raise at a higher than $10 million valuation to avoid that really dreaded down round, right? And the next round that you raise is going to start to be more about actual traction and trajectory of the business. And then certainly the next round, right? So you start to put yourself on a pathway. You have this self-defeating prophecy where you can't stay ahead of your valuation. So yes, you can be overvalued. And yes, that while in the immediacy of it doesn't seem like it's a bad idea, is detrimental to the future of the business. Because if you're able to raise this round and you can't raise the next one, what was the point?
Yeah, I mean, preaching to the choir, JC, I think that's spot on. It's raising the expectations maybe before they're ready to be raised, right? I mean, again, if you have the greatest idea, then you can go execute, but you may price yourself out of that next round of investment if it's too high and people don't see the traction that you need. So yeah, I'm 100% with you. I guess on the flip side, where it may make sense is if you're not looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds of fundraising, right? If it's just one to help you get started, then you set the bar, but the price is set at that point. To your point, it's good, bad, or indifferent. If the next valuation is lower, it's gonna have that negative perception, and as you know, perception can be reality in that world. So yeah, it's an interesting concept because in theory it seems counterintuitive. We always want to maximize value, but especially at pre-revenue, you're setting that bar, and it could make it tougher. And capital is sometimes very difficult to come at the second raise. So yeah, curious, JC, how have you managed this in the past? Will you, seems silly to negotiate down, right? But what is kind of the best path in that, if you do believe that it's overvalued at that point? What's your recommendation?
Yeah, so a couple strategies, right? A lot of it's always going to depend on the situation.
Sure.
Number one, raise more money at the same valuation, right? Because in theory, your concern is this, that you're kind of putting yourself in an awkward position to raise the valuation you want for your next round. So if we know that on average, you're getting diluted 20 to 30% per round, right? Doesn't have to be that much, but that's average, right?
Yeah.
And, this valuation's coming in higher. Try to raise a little bit more money at this valuation where you're kind of combining 2 rounds into one at that point, right? The other thing that you can do is you can set up 2 tranches of a convertible or safe note, right? So you can actually do 2 different valuation triggers at 2 different milestones. So, okay, listen, we're going to raise $1 million. 500,000 of this is going to be at a 4 million. Let's say your target was 4 million, at a $4 million valuation now. then once these objectives are hit, and you want to keep them very, milestone driven, not subjective, like, well, if we feel like it, right? Then the next $500,000 triggers at this increased valuation or some increased valuation cap. So again, either try to raise a little bit more money in this round, because in theory, you're kind of buying yourself runway of 2 rounds at once or more than one round at once, or structuring the agreement so that you have 2 different valuations. So you're coming in at a more comfortable number earlier on, and then you've got some objectives and triggers that say, okay, well, if these things have happened, we've probably justified a higher valuation. And if they haven't, we're not, right? So maybe it's, reaching X number of, dollars in sales, or, it could be milestone objective, like, having so many users on the platform, something that would quantifiably say, okay, at this point, we would justify having a higher valuation than our initial baseline.
Yeah, no, I like it. No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's a great question, Dennis. Great question from the viewer. Thank you for sending that in, and please send more in. You guys, we're here. We want to help however we can. Brett and I have a wealth of knowledge and opinion, good or otherwise. So
definitely we have
send
that.
in your questions. Yeah, right. Great question though, Dennis. Great question from the viewer.
Thank you. And thank you for the viewer too. So I guess that's it. We'll probably, unless you guys have anything to wrap up or any housekeeping items. No.
Nope.
All right, cool. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Find us on Stitcher, YouTube, iTunes, so on and so forth, wherever you get your podcasts and wherever you want to listen to us on the go. We'd love to interact with you. So email us, reach out to us on Twitter, LinkedIn, so on and so forth. And we hope to see you in the next one.
All right. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.